Oh, yes, Joe Banjo Burke with the boys of the Old Brigade on this Easter Sunday here in New York City. And we have with us on the line, all the way up in Boston, Paddy Cullivan, where he had a sold-out show there last night. He's coming to New York City, and particularly Queens, on Thursday and Friday. So the New York Irish Center with his new play. Well, it's new to us, not to him. He's been doing it all over Ireland. And it's called The Murder of Michael Collins. You might know him from the movie Michael Collins. But, Paddy, before we get into the play, I think, as someone who born and raised, went to meetings here in New York City with Irish Northern Aid, and all the anti-treaty people come over, they would never call it the murder of Michael Collins. They would have said it was the assassination of Michael Collins. How did you come to the conclusion that it was murder? Because that makes it sound like a crime and not part of an ongoing civil war.
Well, this is the question I will be bringing to Port Jefferson on the 8th of April, the beautiful Port Jefferson Recreation Centre, and the New York Irish Centre, which, even though you say Queens, it's just over the river. It's 7 minutes from Manhattan on the 7 train. So go to paddycullivan.com for your tickets. You're really going to love the show. It's a one-man show that dares to ask the question, was Michael Collins murdered? Was he assassinated? Or was he just a legitimate target that fell in a civil war? And you're right. It's caused a lot of furore since I brought the show out in 2022. And it's you know, I've been getting anonymous phone calls, John, from people ever since I said he was murdered. And that the story that Sonny O'Neill killed him, and it was all very simple. It was a sniper, and it was just a terrible, tragic accident on a West Cork road in 1922. When I started asking questions, I upturned a lot of apple carts.
Right, but so you deliberately picked that because murder, I associate it with a crime and not part of a civil war. To me, what was murder and a war crime was taking Liam Mellows out of Mountjoy Prison and executing him, while he's in prison by the Free State. I would equate that more coming from an anti-treaty point of view and not on bail and blah down in Cork.
Well, that's why when you come along on Friday, you're going to see that I lay it out. We've been taught a bill of goods here, John, about Michael Collins, especially from the movie, which, even though it's a great movie, you know, Neil Jordan wanted to make a real kind of gangster movie. He's kind of in the mode of Godfather or something like that. But to misquote Mary McCarthy, every word in that movie is a lie, including and, but. Basically, when Michael Collins is heading down he's going to try and make peace down in West Cork in August 1922. He tries to do it early, but then Arthur Griffith dies. He has to come back. There's assassination attempts all week in Dublin. And then he goes back down to Cork on the 20th of August. And he's down there to try and make peace, put the feelers out and do whatever. 30 guys go into the Valley of Death. 24 guys are there to protect him, John. These are professional soldiers. They've got an armored car. They've got 2 machine guns that fire 500 rounds a minute. An ambush is set up not to get Michael Collins, but because they want to get the armored car. They saw it going through in the morning and they said, we'll set up an ambush for him on the way back. He never comes back, and by 6 o'clock, they're taking down the thing. Most of the IRA guys have gone home. There's about 5 guys left with 2 rifles and 3 guns, and all of a sudden, here comes a convoy, and we're told that an ambush breaks out. But, you know, to vastly superior arms, supposedly a guy gets a shot off. Here's the weird thing. 25 guys are sent to protect the most important Irishman in history, the most famous Irishman in the world, and the only casualty in the entire 20-minute ambush is Michael Collins, the most important man. I asked the question, why were there no other deaths, no other injuries? What is going on? And the bill of goods we've been told by historians and academics and various other people since then, I have to tear it apart. And I used 300 images. I use song. I use a lot of comedy because it's a farce, because it's about the press and the cover-up and the fake news media. Sorry, John, sorry to say it. And all of that goes on. And it's a kind of, I've done it hundreds of times, so now it's a really tight show that brings you a kind of a story you've never heard before, and afterwards you're going to be questioning everything you know about history.
Now, Paddy, when I was talking to you before, there is a different change in Ireland. There's a new generation coming up. I was just featured in a documentary about the Irish America and the IRA. You have Kneecap singing in Irish. You have Derry Girls. You got Say Nothing that was up on Netflix. The House of Guinness. I mean, there is a change of people now wanting to look back without all the baggage of history on their shoulders to find out what exactly is going on. Now, I don't know if you could have done this 40 years ago when Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were separate parties, unlike today. They're the one party, the two Civil War parties. I think you would have had a tough sell going around the country with people that were still alive from the Civil War telling this story.
Well, you got to remember, John, as well, there was always rumors about what happened to Collins. The first guy who brought out a book about it was Captain John Feehan in about 1980, where he brought out the book, The Death of Collins, Murder or Accident. He later went on to set up an amazing Mercier Press, which published all sorts of views of what happened to Collins. But there are literally hundreds of books about Collins and quite a few about his death. One amazing book by S.M. Segerson called The Assassination of Michael Collins. So there have been people asking these questions for many, many years, I think the most extraordinary thing is that RT has brought out two documentaries in both 1990 and 2022 where they get the state pathologists to come on and tell us what happened to Michael Collins without actually taking his skull out of the ground and looking at his skull and telling us what happened. It's all based on hearsay, or as I call it, the first rule of Irish history, where we get all our facts is from a guy who goes, I knew a fella who knew a fella. So to be honest with you, it doesn't matter when I did the show, I will still get the same blowback. I mean, both Taoiseachs from Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have been asked, will you exhume the body of Michael Collins and find out what happened? And both have refused to do so. Because to find out the truth of what really happened to him would upset a lot of apple carts. It would put the legitimacy of the state at odds. Now, John, I will say to you, I know what you're saying about the younger generation, but here's my problem. The reason I go so deeply into this and try and get not just overturn our old history, but I'm also trying to teach the younger people as well that don't believe everything you hear and don't believe what's happening right now, but also the kind of, the heavy propaganda that's going on, because I believe that they're coming up with their own, there's almost an essence of the kind of thing that I believed in the early 90s has now become general and popular with everybody. I'm a bit like, as a Republican, John, I'm a bit like a Nirvana fan, who bought their first EP and then got annoyed when they sold 20 million records. That's kind of what's happened, but we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit, and we're losing respect for people like Collins, who was actually a pragmatic genius, and kind of elevating guys who, wonderfully diehard as they were, their thinking didn't evolve that much. And so I really want to bring back Collins as a really important figure. That's why I go into his earlier life when he was spying on the Brits years before the 1916 Rising. He's a really interesting figure. And so you get a really deep dive into someone who I think has been kind of, how would I put it about Collins? He would remind you of someone that may be in leadership today. He was so unpredictable, nobody knew what he was going to do. And that was his superpower.
There is a connection with him where my mother and father from Pettigo in the Balik area, and the British actually coming out of Enniskillen and Kesh took over Pettigo, which was in Donegal. But it was one of the first times where the pro and anti-treaty forces joined together to fight the British. And I remember just reading a lot of history about that area, that Collins was flipping out and telling the British that they have to withdraw from Pettigo. And that's when, to me, he was assassinated shortly after that.
Well, this is a huge secret I go into in the show, John, because we're told this kind of very simple story. There was a pro-treaty side and an anti-treaty side, and one of them occupied the four courts. And then, Collins was very angry at them. That's not true. From January, Collins and the anti-treaty side, the pro and anti-treaty side, are both working together to try and end the civil war in the north, which was very, very dangerous at the time. The first 6 months of 1922 saw more deaths in Northern Ireland, the most amount of deaths until 1972, the height of the trouble. So he was working in tandem with the anti-treaty side, sending arms up north, supporting the IRA in the north. It's why the Northern IRA were pro-treaty, because they were working with Collins. But a series of events leads to the civil war in the south, but it's a lot more to do with how the British were able to manipulate and split people and do the rest of it. And of course, the attack on the Four Courts itself is a result of huge pressure. I'll go into this in the show. It's important that people know this, because the target on Collins' back is not because he was because he started the Civil War, it was an anti-treaty thing. It's more about how he was playing both sides, also playing against the British, Britain's top general is shot on the 22nd of June in the streets of London, Sir Henry Wilson. This is a hugely important part of the story. So I go into it and I showed you that Collins was not necessarily against going back to war with Britain. And I think this is what the issue was. But you'll have to come to the show on the 8th.
Paddy, what is De Valera's role in this? I'm going to tell you this now. Here in New York, my friend Big Bernie O'Boyle, he designed most of the Irish bars in Bronx and Queens. There would never be a picture of Michael Collins up in any of these bars. And either De Valera, because De Valera started executing IRA men in World War II. But De Valera is the one that sent Michael Collins to negotiate with the British. He comes back, and now we got the Civil War going. And to say all hell breaks loose would be an understatement, particularly with a Civil War. But what is Eamon De Valera? Because he's a New Yorker. He's born in New York, and then he goes back to Ireland. And what's his role in all of this?
A lot of you guys are going to be enraged with this show, John. I'm going to tell you something that's really going to annoy you. Eamon De Valera has nothing to do with the death of Michael Collins. He's a private in the IRA. He has zero power. In fact, he just wants to get back into the politics game. When Collins is on his way back through Belnablaw, he's on his way to meet De Valera and to try and negotiate his way back into political life, because De Valera was a politico more than anything else. This is the problem. We've been handed so many cliches through time, and then the movie sealed it and all the rest of it. I'm here to tear the whole thing apart and show you there's a completely different story. And the execution of the IRA men, I know it's an emotive thing. I go back to it all the time myself, the famous 77. I had Erskine Childers coming on stage with me last night, the descendant of the great Erskine Childers, who was the first guy among the first batch to be executed in late November. We always remember Rory O'Connor and those guys, but Erskine Childers, a great friend of Collins, is arrested for possessing Collins' handgun and is shot on the basis of that. But remember, the dirty war begins after the death of Collins. I believe Collins would not have allowed anything near what happened, the executions or anything like it. He was trying to bring people back together. And those executions are emotive. But Erskine Childers came on stage last night, and we had a great 50-minute Q&A afterwards. He's going to be there at the Irish Centre on Thursday and Friday. So it's really important you get along to that, because it's living history to have the great-grandson of one of the guys who was around, and he has some amazing insights into what happened and what was really going on. But to let
Paddy,
you know,
I have to tell you, in Donegal, it's still raw, the executions, because what's commemorated every year is the Drumbo Martyrs, and there's actually a play out now about that, and about why the Drumbo Martyrs were executed because of something else that happened hundreds of miles away, had nothing to do with them in their prison cell up in Donegal. But, it's still there. It's still festering, up in Donegal, and particularly Kerry. You got Ballyseedy. You got, like, a lot of things.
Well, to explain to people, after Michael Collins dies, he's the commander-in-chief of the army. He's the leader of the country. He's 31 years old. He's also the Minister for Finance. The cabinet have not been allowed to meet during the Civil War. In fact, he becomes a de facto dictator to a lot of people. But he's doing it for good reason, because these guys are a bunch of slimes. And when he dies and the Free State government takes back over, the gloves are off. That's when they start shooting people in batches of 4 and lining them up. Sean Hales, Collins' childhood friend, who's trying to investigate what happened to Collins, because remember, there was no investigation into Collins' death, no inquiry. The autopsy was burned. He doesn't even have a death cert, John. Okay? So there was a massive cover-up taking place. Sean Hales is shot on the streets of Dublin on the 8th of December, and on the 9th they bring out the 4 guys and they execute them. And from then on, every couple of weeks, there's another 4 guys executed. This is the nasty part of the Civil War that the Free State instigate, but it's only after the death of Collins. Remember, you don't shoot a guy because you think he's going to be the same as everyone else. Every Irish historian tells you, oh, Collins would have been the same as everyone else. I would have done the same. You don't shoot guys who aren't going to change. You shoot guys who are going to change the world, like JFK. This is our JFK story, is the story of Michael Collins. This man was going to have a completely different Ireland to what we got. What we got was a nasty civil war because Collins had been removed. And I believe he was removed nefariously by people who wanted the war to turn that dirty.
And you listen to Paddy Kavanagh. He's coming to Queens, as he said, the 7 train. It's 1 stop away from Grand Central Station. It's right there at Jackson Avenue. And he's going to be at the New York Irish Center. And if you want to get tickets for this Thursday and Friday, you just type in NewYorkIrishCenter.org. That is all one word, NewYorkIrishCenter.org. and soon as it pops up, you're going to see the tickets for Thursday and Friday. And then also, Paddy, before we'll wrap up here. First of all, I have a problem with the name of the play, The Murder of Michael Collins. But also, what's the uniform you're wearing in the picture of the ad that you use to promote the play?
Okay, well, I am wearing a uniform. I just want to also mention my wonderful friends in Long Island. I'm in Port Jefferson on Wednesday, the 8th. So go to Paddy Cullivan for that too, because incredibly, I had my biggest crowd out there. It's not a really Irish town, but people just come along and they really enjoyed the last show I did there. So do, paddycullivan.com for everything. And then I'm in Chicago on Tuesday the 14th. But, you don't reach that far, John. Even you don't reach that far.
No, I don't think we'll have an effect on Chicago. But we do have an effect on Long Island City.
Of course. And I love Long Island. But here's the thing. The uniform I have in the picture, I bought the uniform. I did a show in it, John, and I almost melted. You know how hot it is on stage. But this was way too heavy. I don't know how either Wolf Tone or Michael Collins went around and did what they did in these kind of clothes. So I will be wearing normal, nice green clothes on the night. But don't worry, you will have one of the most incredible experiences. It'll blow your mind completely. You might have a problem with the title. Afterwards on Friday night at the New York Irish Center, I want you to tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, all right. I'm looking forward to it, man. And listen, I thank you for coming on. Like I said, everyone get out there because you are so natural. Like there's some people get up there and they do a play. Yeah, they're all right. Man, you were born for the stage. When you get up there and that mic is in your hand or you're playing the guitar as you're going on the stage, it is like this guy is meant for the stage. You can just see it. I think you had to be dragged off it. I mean, you were so good up there. I mean, good God. It's just because I saw your last play there, the last time you were in. I think it was last year around this time.
That's right.
It was great because I always did have a problem with every time I go to Dublin, Royal this, the Royal Yacht Club, the Royal, and they're wearing these medals and medallions, the Royal this, the Royal down there. Like, can we just get away from that? Couldn't we change the names of these things? But nothing changed.
You won't believe it, John. They just opened a brand new convention centre. It's beautiful behind Dublin Castle, and they called it the Royal Dublin Convention Centre. And so I do a whole section of the other show about why do we have the Royal prefix in front of everything.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but it's a bit of fun, because if you go to Dublin Castle itself, it's got the pictures of all the lieutenant governors and all these guys like Heytesbury and it's interesting. You got to keep that history alive to show people where we came from.
Well, yeah, no, I don't listen. I'm all against erasing and taking this down and that down. That's part of your history. You can explain it, but you don't disappear it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have, everyone just says Liam Sutcliffe was great. I'm like, why'd you blow up Nelson's pillar? It was a perfectly nice pillar. Just take down the statue of Nelson and put up Patrick Pearse and then stick Nelson out in the zoo.
Listen, Paddy, I spoke and I hung out with the guy that did it.
Oh, boy.
And it wasn't an easy operation when he was attempting to do it. So,
well, I would have done an operation on him because I love Georgian architecture. So forget about those guys,
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Coming to the NewYorkIrishCenter.org, one word, NewYorkIrishCenter.org. It's The Murder of Michael Collins by Paddy Cavanaugh. And
Cullivan.
Paddy,
Cullivan. I'd love to be Paddy
Cullivan. Oh, my God. Can you imagine? Cullivan.
I can do poetry.
Yeah. Don't worry if you're related there. All right, so come down. I'll see you on Friday, Paddy.
See you then, John. Thank you so much.